A warm welcome to Experts Connect on teachsomebody.com, and I'm your host, Kadian Davis Owusu. Today, we're privileged to have Ms. Zia Jones, PeopleSoft consultant and founder of Ocean Bright Consulting in California. And our conversation will be about the implications of COVID-19 on higher education. Hi, Zia. How are you doing?
Hello. Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you today, Kadian?
I'm doing well, thank you. And Zia, can you share a bit about your background?
Absolutely. I have been working in higher education for 20 years. For 5 years, I worked for a group of colleges, and then I have been consulting in higher education for 15 years now. So my clients are a variety of institutions from very large public universities down to private colleges and local community colleges. I focus on the academic processes that surround curriculum and the decisions in the student life cycle that impact their timeline to graduation. So while I'm generally classified as a software consultant in that I help clients use software to automate or streamline different processes, really software never fixes any problems. So I typically end up taking a holistic view where I work with my clients to identify how their institution can best serve their students, and then we figure out what the software can do to support that.
Great, Zia. So, in response to the COVID 19 pandemic, many higher education institutions have resorted to distance learning as an alternative to brick and mortar education. What's your take, Zia, on the long term and short term implications of COVID on higher education?
I think that we have barely begun to see the impact of COVID-19 on education. In the short term, many institutions are seeing budgetary impact. Interestingly, many of my clients are saying that they have not yet seen a decline in enrollments or the number of students,
Yeah.
but outside of that tuition revenue, there's a lot of money typically spent on campus that has dwindled or disappeared when students and staff and faculty are on campus. They're spending money on parking, on dining, on housing and athletics, and all of that revenue has largely gone away. So even though the students are still taking classes, the institutions are really feeling it in their budget. So that's it for the short term. There have been some furloughs and some reductions in classes, but I think that long term, the impacts are looming, and not all institutions are preparing for them because the student volume hasn't dropped off. They're feeling a sense of security that things will be okay and it will all return to normal. And I'm just not sure that that's true. So I think that for this fall, enrollments didn't decrease because many students felt locked into their plans by the time the pandemic impact was being felt. In March, when this all started, most people thought it was a short term thing. We didn't even think that it would still be a consideration in the fall. And even for those that did, or by the time, April, May, June, when that became more clear, most students were locked into their plans for the fall. They couldn't change and apply somewhere else or make a different decision. If they wanted to take a gap year, that was very hard to do. There weren't a lot of opportunities to do something different, to get a job, to volunteer, to travel. All of those activities are also limited by the virus. So for most students, they found that their best option was to continue with the plan that they had for the fall and continue with their education. For fall 21, students have a lot more time, and the impact of the pandemic is becoming a new reality. So that is impacting their choices and their decisions, and they may decide to stay closer to home or attend community college or a less expensive option if the learning is going to be online. It's hard to say how that's going to impact their choices, but fall 2021 is where we will really see how the pandemic changes student behavior because they have the time to make different choices. For the institutions, these budgetary impacts are going to take some time to play out. In the short term, they've furloughed some employees, but over time, they may offered less majors or cut back on majors that don't have a high level of interest, or really redesign their business processes based on the budgetary realities that they're facing. I thought that I wouldn't have any work to do because of the pandemic. I'm a consultant, so I thought if everybody's budgets are tight, they're not going to have money to spend on consulting services or new projects. But for me, the opposite has turned out to be true. I am busier than ever because institutions are realizing they can't support the processes that they had that in some cases were very antiquated.
Yeah.
So they're looking at budgetary impact and they're realizing they need to get a lot more efficient.
Wow, so you've been quite busy giving a lot of academic advice to higher educational institutions. Wow.
I thought I would get a break, but that's not turning out to be true.
Oh my.